All right, guys. One of the benefits of being like an old head, an OG, an old dude is that I go back with mine. I go back with my memory. I go back with pop culture and everything. So I'm in a position where I can analyze the development of all of the things that shaped my development, all the things that shaped my growth in my life and things. I'm talking about pop culture, the things that influenced me and everything. So when I think about hip hop, because hip hop was a big part of my life growing up. Like growing up, I was in the mid to late 80s to the late 90s. That was my era right there of hip hop. I consider it to be the golden era. Some people, it might be different because you're younger, but that's okay. But I've seen all of that. And from my point of view, I truly believe that hip hop has been weaponized against the very people that listen to it, regardless of race, but primarily what you see in the black community because we are ground zero, right? So it used to be that being a criminal, being a thug, being, a menace and everything, all of that was frowned upon. It was only like idiots who got into that. We had so many hip hop songs that warned us about that. We had the self destruction movement with KRS-One. I'll get back to him in a minute. But then we had more subtle lyrics like Slick Rick. Like, get this one, for example. The compliment showed she had a mind in her, and when I smiled, I almost blinded her. She said, "Great Scott, are you a thief? Seems like you got a mouth full of gold teeth." Ah ha ha, I had to find that funny. I said, "No, child, I work hard for the money, and calling me a thief, please don't even try it. Sit down, eat your slice of pizza, and be quiet." You see, Slick Rick took exception or offense to the implication that he was a thief. These days, and since then, we've come to embrace the idea of being a thief. When he did a children's story, things like that, it was a warning. There were so many joints that were out back then that just told kids, just stay on the right path. Don't do this. Don't make your mama cry. Stuff like that. But now we just have this culture where ignorance, like raw ignorance, is accepted, guys. Now I want to get into something that I heard Director X say. All right, so I want to comment on that, and I want to get your opinion on what you think is going on with hip hop and the way it influenced us, like since its inception. All right, so let's talk about this. This is the Gospel According to Mark with a C. He is I, and I am he. Just taking some time to tell you exactly what's on my mind. Thank you for joining me once again, my friends. I hope all is well with you. Now, guys, you might remember that I got to share a panel with Director X, Julian Christian Lutz, and at the time we were talking about Robin Hood, and I was on a panel on Flashcast with a group of people, and we were kind of like dumping on his show Robin Hood. But really, my approach was as a black creator, as someone who's in a position where he can produce content for streaming services, for TV and things like that, I wanted to issue a challenge to him, or challenge him at the time, to do better. Like, why do you keep us stuck in the hood when you have a platform and you have the means and the opportunity to show a more idealistic view of the black community that we so sorely need? Like right now, we are living in the age of videos, and you can watch these things like 24/7. 24/7, you see the black community in a terrible predicament. We're in the hood, we're talking about killing each other. Our beautiful young girls are objectifying themselves. They're talking about busting it wide open and all of this stuff. They were so cute just 10 years ago. 10 years later, now they're bad bitches, and they're showing all their ass and their tits and all of this stuff. And it's just like, I refuse to believe that this is a natural progression. I refuse to believe it because, like I said, I'm an older dude, man. It's like, as a Gen Xer, I come from a time when my mom wasn't covered in tattoos. My mom wasn't twerking. My pops wasn't on the block, even though he came out of Marcy Projects, the same projects as Jay-Z. All of his brothers did too. A lot of his brothers did fall to crime, unfortunately. But they fell. It was well known that they fell. Like, my pops would not let us idolize Uncle so-and-so or so-and-so. No, don't be like Uncle so-and-so was the message, but now we embrace that. Now we uplift our criminals. And this isn't something that's new. Okay. I'll just say, a lot of people want to say that it started with hip hop, and that's kind of what we're talking about here. And I want to just play this clip of what Director X had to say here. All right, so listen up. This.
So the place where it's dangerous to be a rapper in Toronto? People are nodding their heads. Yeah. All right. Well, that says it. That says it.
I think music was fun back then. Now, music to me, it's like it's dangerous.
It shouldn't be dangerous to be a young person making music. It should supposed to be fun and sexy, and you're supposed to have a camaraderie and a friendly rivalry with the other people in the city, and then you do shows together, and you know. And instead, these kids are literally dying. Can't do shows, can't do anything, can't really make any money. Like, what's happening here? You got some young people that are influenced by the music. Music had a lot of influence on me. When we're downstairs looking, we saw the Mobb Deep cassette downstairs. Mobb Deep messed up a whole generation. Bunch of,
You think so?
Think so. I know so. We all do. We all have to be honest. Mobb Deep came out, and a bunch of young black men around the world said, "Oh, that's what I'm supposed to do?"
Okay, so that was Director X, and he was on the Champagne Room. It's a podcast that he co-founded. So you hear him talking about how Mobb Deep specifically influenced the criminal element that you see on the street today. Like, he's talking about Toronto, Canada. That's where he's from, and how it seems like a lot of the crimes are being done by the rappers up there. So he's name checking Mobb Deep. And surely Mobb Deep was a part of that culture. That's around that era that I came out of, like I said before. But I did videos in the past, and I was talking about, this goes back to and including, not just limited to, but NWA. Like, I was ground zero when NWA first dropped. Up until then, we were listening to Can I Kick It? Yes, you can I kick it? Yes, you can. It's just me, myself, and I. We were just listening to, bass. How low can you go? We were listening to I Came in the Door. I said it before. You know what I'm saying? We were listening to, oh yeah, I'm with this, It's like, rappers stepping to me. They want to get some, but I'm the Kane, so you know the outcome. Another victory. They can't get with me, so pick a BC date because you're history. We were listening to that stuff, you know what I mean? Next up, I believe that's me, but then, once NWA dropped, straight out of Compton, crazy motherfucker named Ice Cube from the gang called Niggas with Attitudes. When I'm called off, I get a sawed off, squeeze the trigger and bodies are hauled off. You too, boy, if you fuck with me, the police are gonna have to come get me. We were listening to that all of a sudden, and I was too. When that first dropped, we were like, oh shit, damn, because we were around that age, and we were all feeling some kind of way, We're talking about the late 80s, early 90s. We had a lot of stuff that was going on, like Yusef Hawkins, Howard Beach, Bensonhurst, and we were all thinking Fight the Power, and then they dropped that, and it was like they gave a name to our pain, right? So we all felt like some niggas with attitudes. However, once we started going down that road, it was harder to make the other kind of music because now the bar had been raised or lowered to the point where you had to be hard, man, as hard as you could be. You had to be from the street. You had to be as foul-mouthed as possible, in order to even get a record deal. Then the gangster rap started happening, you know what I mean? And that seemed like it was the only thing that record companies were signing. So the East Coast, where they were doing all of that, Can I Kick It? All of a sudden, that was starting to look soft by comparison, and you had to dumb down your lyrics. You had to sound like you ain't even finished grade school, let alone high school, after a while. And even what NWA was doing, by comparison, was starting to look like it was like higher learning, based after that, like what we started getting after that, So it just seemed like there was a dumbing down of what was expected of ourselves. Like, poetically speaking, Rakim, the way he puts together lyrics and stuff like that, no one was taking the time to do that. It was just a matter of just spitting out the most vile, profane lyrics possible. Now, he's talking about Mobb Deep. Yeah, I remember Mobb Deep. I'm from Queens. That's my backyard. So when they came out, with, what was it? Shook Ones. It was like, how did that jump off? I got you stuck off the realness. We be the infamous. You heard of us, official Queensbridge murderers. It's like now all of a sudden we had to have an answer for what was going on in the West Coast. So everything was like that. But I wouldn't blame Mobb Deep specifically. They were a part of it. They were a part of that wave of influence that I was talking about. I wouldn't even blame NWA. I mean, hip hop speaking, yes, speaking specifically hip hop, but really, I think it started with the blaxploitation movies. Honestly, if I could talk to Director X about that, like I'm definitely feeling what you're saying, bro, because I know, you were a victim of violence and everything too, so you feeling where you're coming from, but those blaxploitation films that we all uplift, I'm talking about Black Caesar, Superfly, all of that stuff is, I think, where we started to worship the criminal element in the community. It was always there, but it just put it on the screen. I think there was always a tendency to kind of think these dudes, these hustlers, they were the ones, they were getting everything. I'm your mama, I'm your daddy, I'm that nigga in the alley, talking about baddest bitches in the bed. This was Curtis Mayfield way back before hip hop, ain't I clean, ain't I, like just talking that jive, you know what I'm saying? So it's like there was always that going on, always. But we made it, or it was made to be popular, from the blaxploitation movies. And I'm not going to spell it out to you guys. Look at the credits that roll with those blaxploitation movies, okay? Look at the album sleeves or the covers that used to be, because now everything is streamed and downloaded. But look at who's behind all of these things as far as signings and the images of these people, your Clive Davises, people like that. It goes higher than Puff or P. Diddy. There was a lot of this shit that was going on. And I know these days it's easy for people to just say, that's just the way black people are. That's just their culture. That's just their culture of violence and everything like that. But like I said, when you reach a certain age, you have an aerial view of the progression of this. When I grew up, it was cool to go outside, man. We used to go outside with our high ass corny tube socks, in our little shorts and everything. And we used to just stay outside all day. We didn't have to worry about all that drive-by bullshit. We didn't have to worry about, stepping on some drug paraphernalia or whatever. It was all good, bro. We had block parties. We had backyard joints. Before I let you go, to be real. It was all love, bro. But I can't believe that it's a natural progression. I believe that part of what he's saying is true. As far as Mobb Deep messed up a lot of kids, they were an instrument in it. I mean, after all, rest in peace, Prodigy. Prodigy actually said, Illuminati want my mind, soul, and my body. Secret society, trying to keep their eye on me. You've had so many lyrics like that where it seems like these artists are letting you know that they're not in charge of what they're saying, And the worst thing ever, not just that people believe the worst of us, but that we believe the worst of ourselves. That's the worst thing ever. So when you have these kids constantly putting this in their minds, in their ears, through their AirPods and all that stuff, and they're getting this conditioning, it doesn't get to be too hard to understand why they're running wild out here, why you see all this violence, why you see all our beautiful daughters. They're beautiful. Why are they fighting? Why are they ghetto? Why are they hood? Why are you erecting a ugly ass, fucked up looking statue in Times Square of some ratchet, obese looking black woman to be adored? You know what I mean? This shit is a psyop. You want to talk about black fatigue? It's engineered, man. It's engineered. I'm tired of having the argument. There's no such thing as black fatigue. It's just racism, man. It's weaponized racism, you person, okay? It's like, you got to understand, man. You got to understand. It's all weaponized. We're supposed to be fighting each other. We're supposed to be fighting other people. It's supposed to be about destruction. That's what it is. So I would say to Director X, I would say to anyone who is opining about what's happening with the black community, there is something happening with the black community. It is tragic and it is by design. So we have to start looking at these things. And those of us who still have a raw voice, because obviously hip hop has been compromised in listening to a lot of you on YouTube. I can see that a lot of you have been compromised. But for those of us who still do have a raw voice, this is what hip hop used to be. I used to love hip hop because I always used to say this is the first time in history where we've actually had black men to be able to speak their own truth. So what happened after we got the right to speak our own truth? We all of a sudden started saying, you're right. We are criminals. We are thieves. We are dishonest. We are violent. We are niggers. What part of the game is that? When we used to try to tell people, I am a man. We used to tell people that I am honorable. I am hardworking. All I need is an opportunity and a chance. I want to raise my families. When did women start saying that I am a bitch? I am promiscuous. I am a cheater. I am a money grubber. It used to be back in the day, they would say, I am virtuous. I am faithful. I can be a wife. I can be a mother. But we seem to think this is a natural occurrence. I don't think so, guys. But anyway, my time is up. I actually have to get to work. W-E-R-K, work. Not with the T, twerk. I'm talking about work. Too many people want to twerk when they should work. Work, 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 work. Anyway, let me get going because I got to walk the dog before I leave. Thank you guys for listening. You can get in the comment section and let me know about how you feel about what Director X said, about what I'm saying. I thank you guys for being here. As always, you can like, you can share, you can subscribe if I entertain you or spark up any thought within your mind at all. And you'd like to keep my channel active because YouTube is trying to, believe me, YouTube is trying to kill me. But if you want to, you can contribute by hitting that super thanks feature on each and every one of my videos. Thanks again, guys. Much love. I'll catch you on the next one. This is The Gospel According to Mark with a C. Rock on.